Chair lays out a complete committee substitute to House Bill 37. Chair recognizes Representative Plessa to explain the bill.
Thank you, Chairman Van Dever, Vice Chair Campos, and members for allowing me to present Committee Substitute House Bill 37 today. I typically keep my layouts brief, but today I must speak from the heart about a matter that touches the deepest part of the human experience. Before I begin, I want to offer a content warning to everyone here watching online that my remarks will address stillbirth and neonatal loss. When a baby is stillborn, the entire world collapses. Parents who had been preparing for lullabies and first steps find themselves picking out caskets and burial plots instead. Families find themselves blindsided by loss, mothers recovering from labor sent home to empty cradles, and loved ones without guidance to handle their grief. The statistics are staggering. Approximately 26,000 babies are lost to stillbirth in the United States each year and claim more children's lives than car accidents, drownings, fire, flu, guns, listeria, poison, and sudden infant death syndrome combined. Here in Texas alone, approximately 2,000 babies are stillborn annually. But what we cannot count are the numbers of grieving parents, siblings, grandparents, friends, clergy, mental health professionals, nurses, and hospital staff who must navigate this unimaginable sorrow. Currently, Texas lacks a standardized perinatal palliative care system. With no standard of care, families are left without critical support during one of the most painful moments of their lives. This is what Committee Substitute House Bill 37 is all about, giving families the gift of time that cannot be recovered once it's gone. Internationally, midwives, bereavement practitioners, and academics encouraged the use of a new technology, a cooling device, otherwise known as cuddle cots, because they allow families to form an important bond with their babies and help them throughout the process of loss. This litigation will create a program to equip maternal facilities with perinatal cooling devices. It will fund critical training for medical staff on compassionate bereavement support, and it will establish a recognition program for hospitals that demonstrate excellence in caring for families experiencing loss. Often, these families are so overwhelmed with loss that the process happens so fast. This is going to slow down time for those families. Members, this bill that comes before you today came to me from a knock on my neighbor's door when I was door knocking during the campaign season. My neighbor is here with us today. I think about her almost every day in the situation that she explained to me. When she learned that her baby would not survive, she made the profoundly brave decision to continue her pregnancy. In that hospital room, as she held her child, every tick of the clock became precious. Every second represented the only chance she would ever have to create a lifetime of memories. My neighbor, she's here today, and I'm going to let her tell her story of her personal loss. But from my conversations with families and doing the research for this bill, I understand that the loss of a child leaves a wound that will never fully heal. But through Committee Substitute House Bill 37, Texas can stand with our grieving families to affirm that every child's life, no matter how brief, deserves to be honored and remembered with dignity. I stand before you today not just as a legislator, but as a neighbor, as a Texan, and as someone who believes deeply that how we care for families in their darkest moments reflect our state and its values. This bill has truly been a unique experience in my legislative career. I have been stunned by the amount of fellow lawmakers who have had personal experiences with stillbirth, their stillborn children, their stillborn siblings, their stillbirth grandchildren, They're all represented in this fight for perinatal bereavement access, and they have signed on to my bill as a joint author or a co-author. I'm honored to present Committee Sub House Bill 37, and I look forward to your questions and your support in bringing this compassionate care to families who need it. With that, I'll answer any questions, reserve my right to close, and some of the handouts are some personal witness testimonies. I ask you all to please read those personal stories, and there's also a breakdown on how the program will be implemented for those, visual learners. And with that, I reserve my right to close.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for Representative Pleasant? Okay, thank you. We will reserve your right to close. Okay. The chair calls Catherine Quintana. I show you registered on behalf of, testifying on behalf of Parkland Health and yourself, and you are for House Bill 37. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Van Dever, Vice Chair Campos, and members of the committee. I'd like to thank Representative Plesa for filing this important bill. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. My name is Catherine Quintana, and I am representing Parkland Hospital and myself. I'm here to share my support of House Bill 37. I have been a certified labor and delivery nurse at Parkland Hospital for 18 years, and for the last 10 years, I've been the family support specialist for our department. I hold several certifications in the field of perinatal bereavement, including perinatal loss care certification by the Hospice and Palliative Credentialing Center, and I'm certified as a bereavement coordinator through Resolve Through Sharing, which is the gold standard in perinatal bereavement training across the country. Parkland is a level 4 designated maternal care facility, and we deliver roughly 13,500 babies annually. And most of the time, my unit is full of happy moments and celebration. But with that, unfortunately, come moments of profound grief and loss. In 2024, over 200 families at Parkland experienced this type of loss through stillbirth and neonatal death. And in my role, I help support and guide these families through the unimaginable. Through an empathic relationship, healthcare providers like me have the unique opportunity to support and validate parents while spending time with their baby after he or she passes away. This time is sacred and irreplaceable. Every moment is precious. We create keepsakes, we take photos, we try to capture every moment possible and every memory that we can. This work takes specialized training and education, and this bill would allocate grant money to provide this needed training all throughout the state, which would benefit grieving families everywhere. Communication is so important when caring for and interacting with a grieving family, and communicating in a respectful and sensitive way is a learned behavior that can and must be taught. The cooling devices that Representative Plesa described to you are also so helpful by slowing some of the changes that occur after death. It provides grieving families the gift of time, and it allows them to be able to say hello and goodbye in separate breaths. We use the cuddle cot in this type of situation, and it is just another way to provide compassionate care in the wake of tragedy. Grant funding is provided by the bill. Grant funding provided by the bill is so important, especially for our rural hospitals who may not have the resources to invest in this type of training or these devices, which can be quite costly. I wish this bill wasn't necessary, but unfortunately everyone knows someone who has been touched by the loss of a baby. House Bill 37 would provide comfort for so many in such a tragic time. Thank you for your consideration, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you. Members, questions? Representative Frank.
Thank you for this. Does it prescribe, and I'm sorry because I've read over the bill, but I'm trying to remember, does it prescribe that it has to be done? I know the hospital has to make it available, but people grieve, particularly in this type of situation, really differently.
Of course. It was my understanding that nothing will be forced on families. It's all about offering options and choices and allowing them to determine what feels right for each family.
Thank you.
Members, other questions? Thank you for your testimony. Chair calls Jennifer Allman. I have you registered as Jennifer Allman, Executive Director for the Texas Catholic Conference of Bishops, and testifying for House Bill 37. Is that correct?
That is correct. My name
Thank
is Jennifer Allman. I'm the Executive Director of a Texas Catholic Conference of Bishops, and I'm testifying in support of House Bill 37. The Catholic Church in Texas, through Catholic Charities, religious orders, parish ministry, and parish pregnancy support centers, has served families in need for over 150 years. We provide these services because of our belief in the inherent dignity of all human life and our desire to serve life at all ages and stages. This bill recognizes the dignity of the lives of the stillborn, babies, or babies with life-limiting diagnosis. This bill ensures that Texas families whose babies have a life-limiting diagnosis have the benefit of cooling devices to allow the family the opportunity for more time with their children. At the time of an infant loss, bereavement care and services help to lessen the trauma, reducing psychological damage. Perinatal bereavement care includes compassionate support, guidance, and education for caregivers and families enduring pregnancy loss, stillbirth, and infant death. You will hear some very powerful testimony from mothers who have experienced this and the positive impact that these devices had on their family. If House Bill 37 passes, HHSC, in partnership with the Palliative Care Interdisciplinary Advisory Council, of which I am a member, will provide a special recognition to hospitals providing specialized care for parents who lose a child to miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant death. As hospitals seek this maternal care designation, it will increase the training and support that equips them with the confidence to provide compassionate care and guidance for patients experiencing the loss of a child. As families receive these prenatal diagnoses, they will have the benefit of selecting a hospital for delivery that has this specialized training. We thank Representative Plisa for bringing this bill forward to increase access to compassionate perinatal bereavement services in Texas hospitals.
Okay, thank you. Members, questions? Representative Schofield.
Forgive me if you're not the right person to ask this. Do you know how much these devices cost?
I do not know the cost of the devices. I only know the benefit that they provide.
And do you know if, do hospitals that deliver babies, and we heard testimony earlier, some don't, but
Yeah.
the hospitals that deliver babies, for the most part, do they already have them, or do almost none of them have them, and we're creating something out of whole cloth? Do we kind of know where we are in terms of
An
that?
HHSC resource witness might know that better than I do, but I do know that there are several within Texas, and you'll hear from families who use them at a variety of different hospitals in Texas.
And is this a new technology, a new device, or is it a new idea anyway?
No, it's certainly not a new idea. You know, we've had ministries where we, help provide photography services and things for families that want a photo of their baby, even if the baby was born still. And so the particular cooling devices have been around a few years. It's not, ancient technology, but it's not brand new either.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members? Representative Cunningham.
Ms. Allman, you mentioned three. You said miscarriage, stillbirth,
And infant death.
and infant. What is infant?
So if the baby is born alive but only has a life expectancy of hours to days,
Okay.
that would be an infant death. And we are seeing those in Texas because many of these babies used to be aborted in the womb. It would be euthanasia in the womb because a family didn't want to go through with a difficult diagnosis like this. And now the babies are being born more often, and families are recognizing the dignity and beauty of those births.
All right. Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Any other questions, members? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, the chair calls Maxine Tomlinson. I have you registered as Maxine Tomlinson, Director of Governmental Relations for Texas New Mexico Hospice and Palliative Care Organization. Have you testifying for House Bill 37, is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Maxine Tomlinson. I am the Director of Governmental Relations with the Texas New Mexico Hospice and Palliative Care Organization here in Austin. I am also on the Palliative Care Interdisciplinary Advisory Council at HHSC, and I'm only going to address a very small piece of the bill. When I originally wrote my testimony, I based it on the bill that had been filed, and that was to inform you that perinatal palliative care, that term needed to be changed because under the Texas Health and Safety Code 142A, it dictates that anybody that utilizes, or I should say, anybody that provides palliative care services now has to call it supported palliative care. I have since learned that Representative Plesha has changed that to bereavement services. So I am happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, members, any questions?
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Chair calls Jacqueline Smith. I have you registered as Jacqueline Smith, testifying on behalf of yourself, and you are for House Bill 37, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee, for this opportunity to share my story. My name is Jacqueline Smith. I am from Duncanville, Texas, and I support HB 37. My husband, Andrew, and I have been married for 20 years. We have 12 children, 6 on earth and 6 in heaven. Today, I am sharing the story of my 7th born child, Gemma Gianna Perpetua Smith. In October of 2019, on October 1st to be exact, was our 20-week sono. This was a big day for my family. We make sonograms a family affair, so the whole family was at the sono, and at the time, they were of ages 18 months to 12 years old. It was a big day also because with 3 girls and 3 boys, baby number 7 was the tiebreaker. But baby was shy that day, actually did not reveal boy or girl, little stinker. But instead, she had other things to reveal. On that day, we learned that she had a chromosomal abnormality, and later testing determined that she was a girl and that she had trisomy 18. This meant that she had an extra 18th chromosome, which essentially meant her body had extra instructions during her time of development. This can display in a variety of different ways in each baby that has that condition. It was a unique pregnancy, so we got the help of an organization called Be Not Afraid. They guided us on our journey from diagnosis to delivery and prepared us for the possible outcomes, which we knew would include possibly death. They gave us insight on questions to ask as we met with doctors and the hospitals, and they told us about the cooling devices that might be available at different hospitals. When we toured our hospital where I would give birth, I made sure to ask if they had the cuddle cot. And their response was that they did, but they would have to find it. Apparently, it was not something that they used often. Then, on January 31st, 2020, I went to a regular doctor's appointment, and Gemma's heartbeat was not what it should be. So they sent me across the street to the hospital. It was time to have our baby. Gemma was born by emergency C-section the afternoon of January 31st, 2020. She weighed 4 pounds, 10 ounces. She was adorable, but I might be biased. Doctors went to work to stabilize and evaluate her, but she wasn't looking very good, so they gave my husband, her daddy, the opportunity to baptize her there in the operating room. She survived 28 hours in which her siblings and her grandpa got to meet her in the NICU, and our Byzantine priest was able to administer the sacraments of confirmation, the Eucharist, and anointing of the sick. The next day, we had a very painful consultation with her doctors. Gemma was facing more challenges than her body could handle. I mentioned that they would need to find the cuddle cot, and they said it would be ready. Gemma passed away the evening of February 1st, 2020. We did experience a couple hiccups regarding the use of the cuddle cot. A hospital staff member thought we would have to have a funeral home set up before they could bring Gemma to my room. My support organization contacted the hospital and cleared up the confusion. And while Gemma was in our room, the device started beeping, and hospital staff had to consult the owner's manual to learn that it just needed more cooling fluid. I think these things are simple things that could be resolved with more training for the hospital staff. But despite those hiccups, having Gemma in my room was an essential part of my family's healing and grieving process. Once Gemma was in my room, at no time did I feel rushed to hand her off to the funeral home. She was with us from Saturday evening through Monday evening, and my stay was until Tuesday because of the C-section. The whole family got a chance to hold her and love on her and make memories with their daughter or their sibling. At night, I would get up, hold and walk with Gemma and take pictures of her precious feet. Long feet, just like the rest of her siblings. And a volunteer photographer from a local support group came and took family pictures. As a family with Gemma, we watched the Super Bowl, because that was on that weekend. And my daughters took turns curling up with their baby sister on the sofa. And my toddler gave his little sister more kisses than I could count. We put her footprints on many memory items, including the family Bible and several blankets. We had a very short window of time to see and hold Gemma. I made sure to soak in every moment I could. I was blessed to be able to prepare for that moment because of the support I had received prior to her birth. Not all families have that gift. It is essential that hospitals are equipped and ready to offer compassionate bereavement services to families during this traumatic and sensitive time. That is why I support HB 37. I ask you to vote this out of committee and to sign or co-author it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, questions? Representative Jones?
Thank you for sharing your story. I'm thankful you had the ability to do what you needed. You and your family had the ability to do what you needed to do. I think this is very important. My colleagues may have had the opportunity to meet my sister, who was Doctor of the Day last week. The reason my sister went to medical school at 40 is because their first child died of SIDS. And I remember that she needed to be with her daughter, my niece. And we as a family just did what we could do to support her in whatever it is she needed to do to be okay. Although I don't think you're ever okay
Right.
with that. It's interesting that I never thought of this. But I want to thank my colleague and my desk mate for bringing it, because we do forget about, it's almost like we don't see them as humans, as people. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Others? Members? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Chair calls Michael Bullock. Dr. Michael Bullock. Okay, we will show Dr. Michael Bullock. Okay, we will show him for House Bill 37, but not testifying. Jennifer Bullock Moore. Same. We will show Jennifer Bullock Moore, registered for House Bill 37, but not testifying. Dr. Terry Major Kincaid. I have you registered as Dr. Terry Major Kincaid, testifying on behalf of yourself. You're a physician, pediatrician, neonatologist, and perinatal hospice. You are for House Bill 37, is that correct?
Yes, sir, you got it correct.
Very good.
I've been married 30 years. My husband still can't say neonatologist, so
Okay.
you got it.
Okay.
Good morning, Chair Van Dever, Vice Chair Campos, esteemed members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today on behalf of House Bill 37. I am coming to you today as a concerned pediatrician, neonatologist, and perinatal hospice doctor. I am employed by UT Health Houston, and I'm Associate Professor of Pediatrics, but today I'm coming to you as a private citizen. I am in support of this funding to increase services for bereavement care as it relates to training of staff, hospital resources to delay tissue decay, and counseling for families who have experienced loss. Often when I share that I do neonatal and perinatal hospice, there's immediate silence, followed by, "That's a thing." Yes, it's a thing. My whole life, all I wanted to be was a neonatologist and hold babies in my hand. Little babies the size of your hand. But the fact of the matter is that despite our best efforts, not all babies will be born alive or survive to go home. Helping families to say hello and goodbye is a very real part of my job. I have birthday parties in the delivery room because sometimes it's going to be the only birthday party they have. We do fingerprints, we take heartbeat recordings, we put them to music, whatever will be meaningful for the family. I've attended at least one funeral where a cuddle cot was used in the home for a baby that died of SIDS. I work all over the state of Texas for the past 25 years, mostly Houston and Dallas, and I can tell you that the standard of care in these hospitals is not the same. Some families have access to teams with specialized training. Some families have access to teams that provide memory making and cooling devices, and some families do not. When an infant is born still or passes after delivery, when we cannot honor the gift of life, the very least we can do is honor the gift of time. I recently cared for a family whose child had a serious birth defect for which there was no cure. The family had thoroughly researched post-delivery care options, and one of their requests was for a cooling device. At this time, I was working at a hospital that didn't have a cooling device. And all over Texas, I've worked in over 40 hospitals all over Texas. It's very different depending on what resources you have. In my experience, although not every family wishes to use this device or finds this device meaningful, many families do. And for this family, it was something they very much wanted, and sadly, we did not have one. When their daughter was born, the family on their own had bought little Ziploc bags of ice, and they spent time with their daughter, and they alternately packed her with ice so that she could stay in the room with them, and they could spend the time with her. Although our team provided a lot of support to this family, not having this device contributed to their sadness. After their daughter passed, they purchased a device for the hospital. And Representative Schofield asked, do most of these hospitals have this device already? And I would say to you that most of these hospitals have had this device donated after a family had an experience that they did not have one. I would also say that it's not new. It's been in the UK for years, actually, since 2011, because they normalized death as a part of life there. And they have a lot of opportunities to use a cuddle cot in the hospital as well as in the home. So it's not necessarily a new device. It's not an inexpensive device. And I do think that we need support from this bill to help particularly our under-resourced hospitals who want to provide the same standard of care. For these families, there are many things we cannot control related to why their child may pass, why their child has this diagnosis, why we couldn't fix it. But we absolutely can control how somebody experiences life with their child after delivery. We can control it with the words we use by standardized education. We can control it by the care options we offer once you have to go through such a horrible experience. For an infant loss is a pain that lasts a lifetime. Thank you so much for allowing me to share a little bit about the families that I've been privileged to serve over the past 25 years. I remember the face of every family who has had to say hello and goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions?
I got to say.
We do have a question. Representative Schofield.
Doctor, I'd asked earlier how much these units cost. Can you give us an estimate?
So Representative Plaza may have more recent estimates, but they make two different devices. They make a blanket that's a little more expensive and for preemies, so that runs between $1,000 and $1,200. And then this thing we're referring to as a cuddle cot, it looks like a bassinet, and the mattress of it has like a cooling pad in it, and that runs about $4,500 to $5,000.
And I would assume they last a long time.
It does last a long time, but it has to be serviced by the hospital. And as someone shared, ideally we hope that we never have to use these devices. So if you don't use them a lot, sometimes even though staff has been trained, if you haven't used it a lot, when you turn one on, it can take a while to kind of refresh your memory about how to use it.
Now, doctor, the bill would require the hospital, and these are hospitals that are assigned a maternal level of care. I don't know how many that is, or if if most hospitals have that or not. But they would be required to, one, make available any available device. So I don't think it necessarily requires them to get one. But it also would require them to have perinatal bereavement care and counseling options. In your experience, kind of how many hospitals have that now? Is it something that's more available in the urban hospitals where there are more resources? What can you tell us about
Oh my
sort
gosh,
of the
I
current
don't-
state of that?
Ooh, I love that question.
If you
I
don't
wish I
know,
knew
it's
the
all right.
answer.
It's not a
I can
quiz.
say this. Prior to starting to work in Houston, I've been back in Houston 4 years. I'm primarily in Dallas now. Most of our hospitals in the community actually had a cuddle cot. The smaller hospitals, a lot of them had a cuddle cot. And then I'm at a bigger hospital now, and we didn't have one. And I actually had not seen that. I trained at Parkland. We had one. And so I just think it's not consistent. And I think depending on how often your hospital experiences this, like Representative Jones mentioned, you may not think about it until you actually have a scenario where a family was looking for this and you didn't have it. So I don't think that I can speak to how many have or have not, but I do know that we can't assume that all the bigger hospitals have one and all the smaller hospitals don't, because in Houston, a lot of our smaller hospitals do actually have one. Their families have actually donated on their own.
And then with respect to the counseling piece of it, do most hospitals have some sort of bereavement counselor or not?
I do know the answer to that, and I can say, just like one of the earlier bills today, mental health in general, we don't have enough resources, and we don't have enough resources for mental health for families that have experienced loss. And so I have actually worked with 2 hospitals that actually had a perinatal bereavement psychologist that was part of our staff. I have that now where I am, and I've had that previously. But I've been in many hospitals where it's really, we're having to do referrals based on the resources that are available online, like a lot of telehealth resources, support groups. Somebody mentioned earlier that RTS is this organization that's standardized. It's called Resolve Through Sharing, and that actually is a national organization responsible for training and teaching for perinatal bereavement care. And so there are a lot of ways to link people to resources, but we don't have enough resources for families navigating this. And we especially don't have enough resources for men, fathers, to be able to express how they're grieving the journey as well.
Because I would think between the two, between the counseling and the device, the counseling for a hospital would be the most expensive to provide.
Yes.
People are almost always more expensive than devices. But I don't know that the bill actually requires each hospital to have their own on staff. It requires counseling options. So I would presume you could share a counselor amongst multiple facilities.
Right, we're hoping we can kind of at least develop a network that's more consistent so that we can provide the available resources to our families and not have to reinvent the wheel. I refer a lot of my families to one of our perinatal psychologists that I used to work with who has a telehealth practice. But just if we had a way or infrastructure to make sure that everybody had access to some way so that we can make sure that counseling, because it doesn't end when families are discharged from the hospital.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, members, other questions?
Oh, sorry.
You're fine. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. The chair calls Katie Tallman. Okay, I show you registered as Katie Tallman. You are testifying on behalf of yourself, and you are for House Bill 37. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, members of the committee, and fellow Texans. I stand before you today not just as a supporter of HB 37, but as a mother who has lived through the kind of loss no parent should ever have to endure. When a parent sees 2 lines on a pregnancy test, there's excitement, joy, some fear, and the planning for a lifetime commences. But when that same parent hears that their baby has died, their world comes to a complete stop, and the person they were before is no longer. They are now a person who's lost a child. Since I was a little girl, becoming a mother has always been my heart's desire. After months of fertility treatments, that dream came true, and my 2 lines appeared, a joy that I can still feel. We learned that we were having twins, and after a few weeks of wrapping our heads around that, we learned that I had miscarried 1. A few weeks later, my 12-week appointment, I was told that my baby had fluid behind their neck. Testing was offered to help us be better informed and understand what we were facing. The test revealed 2 things. We were having a daughter, and she had Turner syndrome. Devastatingly, we were told that she only had about 1% chance to survive. Over the next 12 weeks of my pregnancy, I did my best to prepare for the unthinkable. I read stories from strangers about their experiences being induced to have a stillborn, I toured the cemetery that I begged she would never have to know. I learned that I should ask for a bassinet that acted like a refrigerator. But nothing could have prepared me for the deafening silence of the Doppler on March 17, 2019, when it confirmed that her heart had stopped. For many families, gestational and neonatal loss happens suddenly, without any preparation. Not only is the mother recovering from a physical labor or a cesarean, but she is also trying to process that her wanted and loved baby will never come home to the completed nursery, that there will be no first words, no first steps, no first days of school. As it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to support a lost family in their grief. The least we can provide is time and education. And that's exactly what HB37 intends to do. With proper bereavement training and the availability of cooling devices, families are given more precious moments to bond, to make the memories, to invite family to come and say hello and goodbye. HB37 is not just about policy, it's about compassion, it's about empathy, it's about ensuring dignity and basic standard of care in the most vulnerable time. In hospitals without cooling devices, babies are often taken back and forth to the morgue to have proper refrigeration. This compounds the suffering as parents must repeatedly watch their child being taken from them. In the short time that I had with my daughter, because I had access to a cooling device, I was able to sing to her, read to her, rest with her. When I needed a moment to regroup, I was able to place her in what was called the cuddle cot, knowing that she was being preserved right there in the room with me. I can't imagine the added heartbreak of watching her body deteriorate more rapidly or being forced to say goodbye over and over again because she needed to be refrigerated. I did not realize at the time how fortunate I was to have access to a cooling bassinet. The one my daughter used had been donated by my nurse, Carol. This is the same nurse who confirmed that Everly had passed. Carol specializes in bereavement care, and her presence was a light in an otherwise unbearable experience. The cooling device gave me time to hold my daughter and to look at her face, to feel the weight of her in my arms, and to be her mother in person in the little time I had. Carol guided me through everything. I didn't know what I wanted or needed, but she prepared Everly for me. She wrapped her body, first in plastic to contain her rapidly leaking fluid, and then in her swaddle. She helped me place on her hat. She took pictures of myself, my husband, and Everly together, our only family photos. She captured her handprints and her footprints, and she preserved them for us. Carol held me. Her care, her love, and her support are things we will never forget. Unfortunately, not all of our interactions reflected that same level of compassion, and we did experience the opposite care at times. After being asked to leave merely 18 hours post-birth, I panicked as I was attempting to cram a lifetime of memories into those final moments. I wish I had known then, and that the nurse that I had at that time knew that cooling devices can be used for 2 to 5 days, and that time matters. Medical staff must be trained in compassionate bereavement care so that no grieving parent is met with cold indifference or unprepared silence. These are not luxuries, these are necessities, and they should be the standard. The road since losing Everly has not been an easy one. I've had some extremely low moments that I can honestly say that I am lucky I survived. I had no idea that being separated from her would feel like losing a limb and that something was always missing. I had no idea what true trauma and pain felt like. I have learned that we are completely unprepared as a society to support families who have experienced child loss. As mentioned before, I have learned that if a hospital does have a cooling device, it's often because it was donated by a family who themselves never had access to one. And this is not okay. I'm here today because I held my silent daughter in my arms and was given the gift of a cooling bassinet. I'm here because I had one incredible nurse who was trained in bereavement care. I'm here because every parent deserves the same standards. My heart breaks knowing that families don't get that chance. No parent should be denied access to time with their baby, especially when they will not be coming home. And with HB 37, we have the chance to ensure that they won't. Providing bereavement training and cooling devices is more than basic medical care to Texas families who've experienced the unimaginable. It's about empathy, it's about validation, it's a message to grieving families that we see you, we support you. Your child mattered, existed, and will not be forgotten. Thank you for hearing my story and my heart, and for your attention to the families who need this care now, more than ever. Please show your state and the bereaved families of Texas your support by voting this bill out of committee and signing onto HB 37 as co-author. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, questions? Very powerful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair calls Jessica Phillips. Okay, I have you registered as Jessica Phillips, Perinatal Program Director, DETAF.
Yes.
And you're testifying on behalf of yourself as well, and you're for House Bill 37. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Perfect. Thank you. Chair Van Dever, Vice Chair Campos, and members. As stated, my name is Jessica Phillips, and I'm submitting testimony on behalf of the Texas EMS Trauma and Acute Care Foundation, also known as TTAF, and its perinatal program, Texas Perinatal Services, on House Bill 37. I am a labor and delivery nurse by training with 19 years of experience, and I am currently the Perinatal Program Director for TTAF and Texas Perinatal Services. TTAF is an approved surveying entity by the Texas Department of State Health Services to provide maternal and neonatal levels of care verification surveys for hospitals as required for designation. In this role, I have had the opportunity to support over 150 maternal and neonatal programs across Texas and to attend 136 on-site events in Texas hospitals. These events consisted of maternal and neonatal surveys and consultations at level 2 through level 4 facilities with annual birth volumes ranging from 170 to over 12,000. I would like to thank Representative Mihaela Plesa for her thoughtful concern for families in Texas. I appreciate the committee substitute to HB 37 she has provided to focus on perinatal bereavement care. It is imperative that we meet the unique needs of families experiencing perinatal loss and that they have a full range of appropriate options available to them to support their grieving process. As healthcare providers caring for these families, we are tasked with assisting them to create and preserve what should have been a long lifetime of memories in a very brief period of time. While all facilities with a maternal designation are currently required to provide bereavement care that is appropriate to support the patient population they serve, the methods they utilize can be dependent upon the resources available to them. The requirement for cooling technology and perinatal bereavement care counseling options could expand comprehensive bereavement care for all families. The services provided for families experiencing loss should be individualized, and the support available to them should not be limited by where their baby is born. Cooling technology to support family-centered bereavement care is an option that may be desired by families experiencing the loss of a child. While this technology is available in many facilities, the cost is prohibitive for others, particularly our rural facilities. I recommend that if funds become available through a grant, that smaller and rural hospitals not be penalized in their designation if they do not receive funding. Lastly, the 22 regional advisory councils, or RACs, across Texas each have perinatal care regions, also known as PCRs, that are focused on the perinatal care provided in their regions. While the RACs were created to develop, implement, and monitor a regional trauma system plan, their scope of work has expanded significantly to include maternal and neonatal systems of care in addition to other duties. The RACs are well acquainted with the needs of the hospitals in their region and work collaboratively with those hospitals to meet needs in multiple ways, including through the provision of education and resources. Since the maternal rules for designation require PCR participation by medical directors and program managers, the RACs would be well suited to oversee the education element. I appreciate the opportunity to provide this testimony in support of Texas families and the healthcare providers working diligently to care for them.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Okay, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Chair calls John Litzler. I have you registered as John Litzler with the Baptist General Convention of Texas Christian Life Commission, and you are testifying for House Bill 37. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Van Dever and committee members. My name is John Litzler. I am the Director of Public Policy and General Counsel for the Baptist General Convention of Texas Christian Life Commission. We often just go by Texas Baptist. I'm testifying for House Bill 37. Similar to the Conference of Catholic Bishops you heard earlier, we believe that all human life is made in the image of our Creator and therefore has inherent value, dignity, and worth. And so we support legislation that would promote a culture of life in Texas, and we believe House Bill 37 fits this bill. Because whether a child's passing is intrauterine or shortly after birth, that child has value, and the loss of any child is an absolute tragedy. As you've heard today, this technology gives families the gift of time. You've heard powerful testimony from mothers about the gift of time that these cooling beds can give. But I also wanted to let you know that Texas Baptists endorse chaplains. We endorse chaplains in a variety of contexts, to the armed forces, to TDCJ, but also in healthcare settings. And we have healthcare chaplains who are serving all across Texas, and they're on the front line serving mothers and families after the loss of a child in neonatal death or stillbirth. I've talked to some of these chaplains, and in talking to some of them, they've shared with me just how quickly a child's body has to be removed from a healthcare setting if they don't have this type of cooling technology, particularly if it's a healthcare facility that doesn't have a morgue attached to it. And the one chaplain specifically told me that, you know, by the time he got there, got to pray with the family, read Psalm 139, it was already time to take the child away from the parents. And certainly if the mother's been through a medical procedure or has needed, medication, that time is so precious and short, and it can end very quickly. And so finally, I just want to emphasize our appreciation for the tier structure that's in the committee substitute. First, for facilities that don't already have this technology in it. Second, for those who treat a greater number of high-risk pregnancies. And then third, for those who have a high number of child deliveries. I think that priority structure makes sure that these are getting where they need to go, that they're getting to the healthcare facilities where they need to be. So, I asked several of the same questions that y'all have asked. Great questions. How much does this cost? What does this look like? I was surprised at how affordable they are. I was surprised at how simple they were, how much they look like a regular bassinet, just with a little portable cooling system connected to it. I think this is a great thing for our state to do. I think we can get these in a lot of healthcare facilities. So thank you to the representative for bringing this bill. And if you have any questions, I'll do my best to try and answer.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for this one? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Chair calls John Seago. Okay, I have you registered as John Seago, President of Texas Right to Life, and you are testifying on behalf of Texas Right to Life and yourself, and you are neutral on House Bill 37. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
Chairman, members, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My notes say good morning, but we all know that's not accurate anymore. My name is Dr. John Seago. I serve as the president of Texas Right to Life. I'm also a trained bioethicist, master's and doctorate's degrees in bioethicist, have been involved in discussions around perinatal palliative care and palliative care generally. I am testifying neutral on House Bill 37. As you've heard, palliative care can be a great benefit to older patients as well as younger ones who are not expected to live very long. This is a compassionate approach to them in both scenarios. One of the most promising developments in medicine is the emergence of a field called perinatal palliative care. Is how do we support families, how do we support these babies that may not live very long, that may have a life-limiting diagnosis. This is a pro-life option for learning that children have a disability. As we've heard time and time again in this very powerful testimony, this is a way to dignify, this is a way to value and appreciate those children and support their families. House Bill 37 has been amended. I just want to raise your awareness to this. It's been amended to acknowledge that this bill actually only addresses a small fraction of perinatal palliative care services. So whenever we're using that term, perinatal palliative care actually does a lot of different things, not just bereavement support, which has been the focus. And a lot of the stories that we've heard here, these families benefited from a robust perinatal palliative care system, but that's not what this bill is. This is specifically about perinatal bereavement care. There is a lot that Texas can do. Just for perspective for the committee, there is a lot more that Texas can do to support these families, to support these babies, and to treat them when they have a life-threatening condition in perinatal palliative care. We don't see this discussion a lot in the legislature. There's not funding for these programs. There is a bill by Representative Swanson right now to just collect the data, to give that resources to families when they find out their child has a disability. Just make sure that families know of the nonprofits that are in this space, but we don't fund these programs, perinatal palliative services. And again, this is just a small fraction of how we are serving these families in these tragic situations. Bereavement care is important, don't get me wrong. This is a critical piece, and we've heard how this is life-changing for these families and how it's giving dignity to these children. But perinatal palliative care as a whole includes pain management, proper diagnosis, supportive treatment, a whole lot more that Texas can do for these babies and these families. So I encourage the legislature, as we are supportive of this bill, as we're moving this through, let's be aware that we could do a very similar bill for all perinatal palliative care, not just bereavement support. And I know some of the conversations around this bill have been thinking this was all perinatal palliative care, not just this. So we want to focus this session on making sure families can use these services, know of these services are available. Thank you, Chairman and members. We please ask you to consider Texas Right to Life as a partner in our effort to build a pro-life Texas, to serve these families, to serve these babies with all the tools possible in the state of Texas. I'll yield for questions. Thank you,
Okay,
Chairman.
and I just want to clarify that you are neutral on the bill.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Okay, thank you for your testimony. That's it. Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 37? Okay, hearing none, the chair recognizes Representative Plessa to close on your bill.
Thank you so much, members, for your time. I have some answers for you guys. First, Chairman Frank, you asked if this is a mandatory. This is permissive. This is just if families want the option of having these different things, right? Photographers, people to take imprints of the feet, or a cooling device. As you guys have heard, most of the time when a hospital has these devices, it's because a family has had a loss and they're purchasing them. So to answer your question, Representative Schofield, they are, when you're talking about medical devices, pretty cheap. My staff has collected, there are multiple devices that the hospitals can purchase. It's not just one device. So my staff said a Cuddle Cot Diamond package is about $2,700. There's another one that's about $2,400. A blanket can be $4,500. So there's different devices that can be purchased specified to the hospital's needs, and that's permissive also in the bill. Another question that was asked was about how many hospitals. There are about 200 hospitals with this type of designation in the state of Texas. But as we've heard in the testimonies, if you live in a Houston or a Dallas or an Austin, there's a good chance that a family has experienced this loss, has purchased this device, and donated to the hospital. What we're trying to focus on are the hospitals that don't have large populations, right? And we're wanting to make the playing field a little bit even, and that's why in the committee sub we've created the tiered systems, right? And so I can answer any questions about that specifically, but with that, I close and I just ask for your favorable consideration. And
Okay, I think we have
okay, yeah.
a question or comment. I think Vice Chair Campos.
I just wanted to tell you that I recognize your passion and all of your hard work. I think it's a really, really great bill, and thank you for putting so much into it.
Thank you so much. And, I think that for us as legislators, we always look at the fiscal note. What's the fiscal note going to be? And I'll just say, this fiscal note on this bill it's less than $500,000. And we have a writer currently that's $5 million to fund this bill that's been approved. So, it's just been an honor to carry this bill. It's been an honor to to hear the different stories from our colleagues and our friends and our neighbors who've experienced this. And that's all we're trying to do, is just give these families a little bit of extra time to say hello and to say goodbye. And with that, I close.
Thank you, members. Thank you very much for bringing the bill. No other questions? Okay, if not, Chair withdraws the committee